The topic and the issue of deliberation given to me is why family medicine. I think none of us present here need a convincing answer of why we need family medicine in the country. But what I'll take you through is the evidence that exists in our systems and some of the issues we need to address in taking this message, why family medicine, to the rest of the ecosystem. And the first and foremost thing about family medicine is the building up of uniformity of concept. And when we started up the program of family medicine, we have been the pioneers. The National Board of Examinations has been the pioneer in introducing country's first and today's largest program in family medicine. And what we found that the concept of family physician as a whole was lacking, and it was like one big elephant in the room, and everybody in the room was blindfolded and trying to identifying what it is like. So based on the most international concepts as advocated by WONCA, WHO, this is the definition which we have adopted, and the family care physician is a physician of first contact, and he is liable to give treatment of varied medical conditions which are not limited by age, cause, organ system, or diagnosis. And there are a multitude of reasons which go on and make the family medicine physician the first medical practitioner and a physician of most critical relevance in the entire healthcare system. Some of the factors leading to this first contact being affordability, familiarity, ease of communication, and the sense of ownership of the smallest ecosystem in our healthcare system, that is the family, and of course a continuum of care and greater focus on disease prevention and health advocacy. In fact, family physician today is the only voice of the patient in this complex healthcare system, which is guided by an equally complex and challenging financing mechanisms, and the ability of the family physician or the GP to find the right kind of treatment at the most appropriate cost is a skill and competency no other physician in the system can match or offer. Now, if you trace the roots of how the government has been reacting to this discipline of family medicine, although it's entirely a need of the society and a need of the medical profession, for the first time, if you see the recent documents, the immediately preceding national health policy makes two references to the discipline of family medicine. Firstly, it identifies the importance of family medicine, and secondly, it identifies and gives us a clear quantitative framework of what should be the future of family medicine in terms of the growth in medical education. And it's very encouraging to see that the visionary policymakers during that period had identified 25% of all postgraduate seats in the country to be that of family medicine. And going by those figures, today, I'm using the hashtag in this era of hashtag, the hashtag FamMed should have had 6,000 plus seats, but the ground reality is today we are having just 2 MD seats in one medical college, and even that program is struggling to stay afloat. And the DNB Family Medicine today offers 192 seats of 3 years duration at 57 institutions across the country. Whether that is sufficient or not, and what are the exact numbers, we'll just see in a minute. Our course duration is 36 months, and other than the traditional concept of training the physicians in secondary, tertiary, and even quaternary care settings, our program trains the candidates for 9 months, that is the recommendation in the curriculum, in community-based settings, while the remaining 27 months have to be based in secondary and tertiary care settings. The program is entirely competency-based. The 6 core areas have been identified, and the assessment of the candidates is in those areas of basic physician medicine competencies, surgical competencies, the pediatric competencies, obstetrics and gynecological competencies, public health competencies, and lastly, the competencies pertaining to emergency and acute care. There are 3 mandatory formative assessments which help us maintain quality assurance into the program and maintenance of portfolios. And of course, our program focuses on assessment through the entire 4 layers of the Miller's pyramid. The MCI vision of 2015, although 2015 is over now, and everybody working in the field of medical education is trying to analyze about the translation of this vision into action. Emphasis for training in primary and secondary care level with compulsory family medicine training. And this was to be incorporated. This vision document was released in 2011, and a series of reforms were advocated, and this compulsory family medicine training was to be advocated as part of our undergraduate curriculum. The recommended integration of principles of family medicine into the existing curriculum. So whatever we have discussed about the uniformity of concept is ought to be integrated into our graduate curriculum. Friends, if we have a current look at the context of health indicators, where India stands, as well as the burden of disease, it's not very too difficult to identify that the top 5 killer diseases will require substantial engagement of specialists and super specialists to take care of the rising burden of disease. But a large fraction of this is entirely preventable and would lie in the domain of continuity of care and promotive health. And unless and until we have a very, very robust supply chain mechanism to handle that primary care, which is physician-based as well as non-physician-based. When Mr. Desi Raju was the secretary, we had the opportunity of building up a momentum around the non-physician based approach towards strengthening primary care as well, but that is a different ballgame altogether. In the domain of physician based primary care, the numbers are alarming. And this slide will indicate if we were to equip even 10% of our medical officers posted at primary healthcare centers, the figures would look like something like 2,500 physicians to be trained in family medicine, and a small fraction at community health centers, and leave aside the big domain of private practice or the GP in the practice domain as such. The numbers will look as alarming as 10 to 15% of our total workforce of 800,000 doctors as on date. So in the next 20 years, 30 years, even we cannot aim of creating that kind of family physicians in the country, even if we were to scale up our capacity by a humongous 200, 300, 400%. As I indicated earlier, today our program stands at 192 seats per annum. And it requires a drastic change in the ecosystem of postgraduate training of how we were able to scale that up. To talk of the expenses of education and healthcare, now this is latest data published by the National Sample Survey Office under the Ministry of Statistics. And although these figures would look really affordable, that the average medical expenditure per hospitalization case stands at roughly 26,000 rupees. And in public hospitals, roughly 6,000 rupees. In terms of the purchase parity or the average income of one household, and especially considering the large fraction of our population which doesn't have access to the basic health care and they are below poverty line, even these figures are clearly out of their range. So the only way we can provide an affordable system of healthcare is to build around preventive and promotive healthcare and to reduce hospitalization to the extent where it is possible. The cost of educating or creating an MBBS physician, as per the government estimates of a previous year, is over 1 crore. And this is in line with what is the expenditure in USA, Australia, or Singapore. But friends, do we have that kind of economic mechanisms here that a low and middle income country like India can run our medical education system at these prohibitive costs? And if we talk of the cost of a residency based training, leave aside the capitation or the grey component in the fee which is being prevalent and determined as per the legally certified and regulatory systems in private medical institutions, that itself is touching roughly 2 lakh rupees a month, or 60 to 70 lakh rupees for a 3-year MD-MS program. And going back to our curriculum, at this cost, what are we training? The graduate medical education system in India happens mostly in the tertiary care environment in medical colleges. Out of the 142 weeks of clinical rotation, which our medical graduates, the undergraduates are exposed to, roughly 92% of the time is spent in tertiary care, and only 12 weeks, that is 8.5% of time, is spent in primary care, and that too in a very, very controlled environment with a limited project given to them about adopting a family and working up one problem of that family. There are various advantages of training our physicians in tertiary care. The advantages of role models of faculty and a lot of teaching material available, but it has a sheer disadvantage with regard to the objectives of undergraduate medical education, which aim to create a physician which can manage common outpatient and emergency problems. In fact, everything which was highlighted by the preceding speaker in the competencies of a physician identified by Wonka. All these are the competencies which are already documented in the graduate medical education curriculum which is prevalent in India. But are our graduates today able to do that? The answer is a big no. In the existing curriculum, we have the candidates which are treating to patients attending tertiary care institutions with complex illnesses and rare health problems. And the focus on diagnosis, management, communication, the professionalism and approach to patient is totally ignored. While the diagnosis in tertiary care is being based on investigations, this will help the students to identify the rare illnesses and investigations. But the treatment is being undertaken in silos by a team of physicians with referral of the focus on referrals and these silos of medical profession being maintained rather than a physician who can integrate various disciplines and able to look at patient as a whole. And this translates to increased cost and inappropriate care when these graduates go on to work in the primary care systems and they find themselves out of place. And the medical graduates of today rely upon more fixing the problems identified and focusing on referrals rather than healthcare promoters, disease preventers, and point of care approach. And these are the factors which are driving them, in fact, to pursue a career in specialty and super specialty based education. Further channelizing this vicious cycle towards the growth of those clinical disciplines where the demand is more, and a net casualty of the entire process is roughly 15% of our workforce, or 90,000 of our physicians today who are out of the medical colleges in the preceding 2 years, they are sitting at home or working jobs which they are not meant to do. They are under or non-employed into the medical education system. And that is becoming a big social problem, because after spending that 1 crore rupee out of public funds or a humongous amount of money out of their family-driven or financed funds, these graduates are not fit for purpose, or they cannot be gainfully deployed to the purpose. Now, addressing this issue of family medicine, the development or identification of family medicine as a thrust area for our higher education can really solve a lot of problems. Nearly all of the medical graduates, they wish to pursue post-graduation. And while 27,000 postgraduate seats are available for 54,000 undergraduate doctors, which are entering into the system every year, that there is a huge need for competent family medicine specialists in the primary and secondary care, which the medical graduates are not aware, even the employers are not aware of how they can gainfully deploy these graduates into their ecosystems. And especially by introduction of family medicine education in the UG training, there is possibility of empowering the students to work over there. Worldwide, there's a greater consensus building around the social accountability of medical institutions. And one of the pillars of social accountability is how gainfully we are deploying the medical graduates to the community, as well as the medical institutions as the training sites, taking up the healthcare ecosystems as the training space, rather than the one institution taking the onus, or the secondary or tertiary care institution owning up the responsibility. And unless and until we move on from a secondary or tertiary care-based medical education to a community-based education system, we will not be able to do justice to this issue as well. Now, some of the common myths and thoughts about family medicine. while I interact with the young graduates, many of them come up with variable thoughts about family medicine is a neglected discipline, it's a last order discipline, and those who are not able to get a clinical discipline, they will be entering into the system. It is not the case. It is no more a neglected discipline, it's no more a last order discipline. Today, family medicine is being opted in our counseling by the middle order candidates after the major clinical disciplines which continue to drive glamour in the medical profession today, the radio diagnosis, pediatrics, orthopedics, and so on. We have motivated candidates who are making the family medicine as a career choice, leaving out some of the other clinical disciplines. And while we as a professional stakeholders firmly believe and popularize this concept that the family medicine physician is a leader of the functional unit of the healthcare delivery system, and a family medicine physician is the face of medical profession, and he represents a vibrant and responsive society. Friends, in case India has to emerge as one of the important contributors to the global economy, we just cannot think of ignoring the primary care as a whole. And when we talk of primary care, we have to give due respect to the physician as well as the non-physician based approaches. And amongst the physician based approach, family medicine is the only way forward. And if we have a look at the Hippocratic Oath, in fact, the family medicine physician is the only physician who can translate the entire Hippocratic Oath into action by way of his or her own competencies without any silos of age, gender, organ, and cause. The challenges for primary care that have been identified: declining numbers, as we'd seen shown earlier, that against the projected demand, we do not have that capacity which is being inbuilt into the system. Maldistribution, while they have to be gainfully deployed into the community settings and working with the community, we feel a lot of attraction of our postgraduates in family medicine sticking on to their roles in secondary and tertiary care positions. And in terms of the widening gap of the income of specialist and primary care physicians, which we found that it is a global phenomenon, this has to be addressed, and the government of the day as well as medical profession holds a key answer to how they would like to address this issue. And this is at a glance of the family medicine program in India, addressing the burden of disease. And if we link this up with the infrastructure and training resources, work up to scaling up the competencies, as well as addressing the problem which exists in each of the 59 programs of DNB and MD programs in the country, and finding up the most appropriate placement of family physicians in the healthcare system. Family medicine has traditionally been the biggest practice area in our medical profession. In fact, if we look at the scenario prevalent before in the preceding century, or 1950s to year 2000, it was only GPs who used to be the face of medical profession. And from high to low middle income countries, the physician-based primary care cannot be discounted or controlled. And lastly, there is no why to family medicine. The current resurgence in family medicine, which we have witnessed in the year 2006 onwards, as we saw the greater demand for family medicine into the health system, as well as a large number of our institutions partnering with the National Board of Examinations on voluntary basis to implement these residency-based programs, we have built up momentum in family medicine. And in order to address this issue of why this family medicine momentum must be continued through a series of measures in the days, weeks, and years to come. And as our recognition of excellence in family medicine, the National Board of Examinations has instituted a gold medal in family medicine in the previous year, in October 2014. And the first list of our awardees from the 3 sessions which have passed by after 2014 will be announced at our convocation very shortly. And we'll continue to support family medicine as our key area, as our thrust area, with a series of activities. Thank you very much.